Well, another exciting Sunday is in the books. Week 3 of the NFL season, almost done now. One more game, the Monday night game tomorrow night. Green Bay Packers going on the road to play the Seattle Seahawks. Green Bay currently installed as a 3-point favorite in that game on BETDAQ. 45 the total. What a game. The nightcap tonight, the New England-Baltimore game, what a game that was. Don't know if you saw that. 31-30, Baltimore winning in dramatic fashion. New England really had that game under control in the middle of the fourth quarter, ahead by 9 points. The Baltimore offense came to life at the end of the game. Really a whole lot of offense in this game, period, as you'd expect from a 31-30 game. Both of these defenses, neither defense is going to be very happy, I don't think, coming out of this game. But to me, the story of the game was the play of Baltimore quarterback Joe Flacco. Now, Tom Brady was Tom Brady. He looked great, as you expect. But Flacco, just last year, a lot of people were questioning whether he was a liability on this team. Now, he silenced some of those critics in the playoffs last year with his play against the Patriots, coincidentally, in the AFC Championship game, albeit in a losing effort. But I think through these first 3 weeks of the season, Flacco has sort of cemented himself. He has arrived as an NFL quarterback. There's no longer a question of, is this guy any good? Joe Flacco is good, and he is now and will be going forward the reason the Ravens win games, because that defense didn't look quite as good as it has been in the past. What you'd expect. Terrell Suggs, the best player on that defense, not playing right now. Obviously, Ray Lewis and Ed Reed aging a bit. Now, I mean, it's still a good unit, competitive. I recognize they were playing the New England Patriots, one of the best offenses in the league, so, what can you expect? But still, not quite the Baltimore Ravens defense we're used to seeing. Thrilling game anyway. As I said, Baltimore wins by 1 point. New England tickets did get cashed, though. Baltimore was a 2.5-point favorite in that game. Had a couple of big surprises this Sunday, as we always have every Sunday. I want to talk about a couple of them. Most surprising result to me was the Kansas City Chiefs going in the Superdome and beating the New Orleans Saints. What has happened to the New Orleans Saints? Heard Drew Brees in his post-game press conference talk about how they're going to turn it around. He knows that. They're going to turn it around. Starting to sound like a bunch of empty words. 0-3 now, losing to the Chiefs. The Chiefs look like one of the worst teams in the league in the first 2 weeks, getting blown out at home by Atlanta in week 1, then getting blown out by Buffalo in week 2. New Orleans up 24-6 in this game late in the third quarter. Kansas City comes back and wins it in overtime. A shocking result there. Just as big a surprise, maybe even more surprising to some people. I couldn't believe when New Orleans was up 24-6 in that game. I thought it was so over, but the Vikings beating the San Francisco 49ers. Maybe I just don't list that as my first surprise because the Vikings were ahead the whole game. So it didn't come as so much of a shock as that Kansas City game when they came back at the end to tie that game then to win in overtime. But the Vikings beating the Niners 24-13, what do you make of that? Minnesota, they were 1-1 this year, but it hadn't been too impressive in their 2 wins. Their 2 wins have been over 2 bad teams, Jacksonville and Indianapolis, beating the Jaguars in overtime and losing to the Colts on a last-second field goal type situation. Adam Vinatieri making that field goal for Indianapolis. But really, this line, I classified this line as suspicious heading into the game. I felt it was funny. The Niners were only a 7-point favorite, and on BETDAQ there was a 6.5-point market offered before this game. So they thought it was a little weird. The Niners were only favored by that many, and sure enough, Minnesota goes on to win that ball game 24-13. Don't know what to make of that. I know Christian Ponder played a good game. Listen, I wouldn't overreact if I were a 49ers fan. I saw that team first 2 weeks of the season, and they looked good enough, pretty good. But I tell you what, they're no longer first place in their division because the other surprise, really the surprise team through 3 weeks of the NFL season is the Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals play very similar to the type of football the San Francisco 49ers play. And these last 2 weeks, I've thrown in sort of a caveat, but their defense isn't quite as good. No longer sure about that. This Arizona Cardinal defense, we need to start paying attention. After holding New England to less than 20 points last week up in New England, and we saw that New England offense tonight against Baltimore, there's nothing wrong with that offense. So, they dominate the Philadelphia Eagles today, holding the Eagles to 6 points. Arizona cruising to a 27-6 win. Eagles were favored in that game, favored all week, a 3-point favorite all week. Then a Philadelphia -4 market was put up on BETDAQ before the game. So nobody taking Arizona seriously. Maybe they're this year's 49ers. The 49ers last year, as we've talked about, because they were expected to be bad, nobody took them seriously throughout the first half of the season. The result was 9 covers in their first 10 games. So we need to keep an eye on a team like the Arizona Cardinals because the Philadelphia Eagles, Looked pretty good on offense last week against Baltimore, going up and down the field against the Ravens. If the Eagles hadn't turned it over some in that game, they would have scored well over 30 points. Shut down today by the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona now 3-0. Again, first place in that NFC West. We've been saying that San Francisco's look like the best team in the league. Are they the best team in their own division? Now, as of now, they're not in first place. Now, so if it's not San Francisco, if they're not the best team in the league right now, who is? I nominate two teams, the Houston Texans and the Atlanta Falcons. Houston, a very impressive road win today against the Denver Broncos. In a game, they only won that game by 6 points. Really was not that close. Houston was up 20 points in the fourth quarter of that game. Denver tacked on a couple of late touchdowns. Sort of a desperation chance to win the game there at the end, or they were still in it as the fourth quarter wound down. Really, Houston was in control of that game, dominated the action, clearly looked like the better team. I watched most of that game. Couldn't be more impressed with the Houston Texans. 3-0 now for the first time in franchise history. This Houston team has been a great team to back over the past year and a half. One of the best teams in the league outside of the San Francisco 49ers. And the Atlanta Falcons, sorry to say, they lost me money. I've been saying all week my favorite bet of the week was the San Diego Chargers -3. And sometimes it makes you look dumb. Because I tell you what, I follow this fairly close. I felt good about this. My other bet that I liked that ended up winning, the Oakland Raiders, I did not feel as good about. As a matter of fact, I was almost embarrassed to throw the Raiders out there as a pick. I just thought that line was so funny and so suspicious that I just thought I've seen this before. And when something looks this weird, sort of the weirdness takes over, and I thought the Oakland Raiders side would win. And the Oakland Raiders did win that game against the Steelers. And boy, did Carson Palmer look good. Vintage Palmer. He's never looked better in his career. Now, I know the Steelers were without a couple of key defenders, but Carson Palmer was playing some football. But back to the Atlanta Falcons. A dominating 27-3 victory over San Diego. A Chargers team that had been playing good football through 2 weeks of the year, or through the first 2 weeks. Led the NFL in rush defense, in addition to that offense that certainly looked like it was back. At least they looked like they were back last week against the Tennessee Titans. But Atlanta showed that they were the better team going out on the road, short week after that Monday night victory over the Denver Broncos, and really putting it to the San Diego Chargers, 27-3. A shocking result to me personally, and it's made me take notice of the Atlanta Falcons. And it's not that I wasn't taking them seriously before, but I thought, well, a little, on defense, Brent Grimes, of course, their best cornerback, be out for the year. I knew Sean Weatherspoon was questionable coming into the game. I tell you what, that defense looks strong. Mike Nolan, first-year defensive coordinator there in Atlanta, can't say enough about the job he's doing. Couple of games I want to mention. The wildest game of the day, an absolutely crazy game. Tennessee Titans hosting the Detroit Lions. Detroit was a 3.5-point favorite in this game. Tennessee got off to a big lead, had a comfortable 17-6 lead in the first half. Detroit came back, a barrage of scoring. Detroit went up 27-20 in this game before the fourth quarter. Now, there were 46 fourth quarter points scored in this game. That's right. In the Tennessee-Detroit game, there were 46 fourth quarter points scored, including the the Detroit Lions were 14 points down with 18 seconds left. 2 touchdown passes in the last 18 seconds from backup quarterback Sean Hill, who was in there for an injured Matt Stafford. A Hail Mary pass. They recovered an onside kick. Hail Mary pass from the 46-yard line with no time left to send the game into overtime. But once they were in overtime, the Titans won, but the craziness didn't stop there. The Lions had a chance to kick a field goal. They were in gimme range, 3 points behind. That would have extended the overtime. Had fourth and about a yard. Instead, they decided to go for it. Now, it was a bold call. You understood at the time why they made the call, because it was only a yard, and if they had made it, they were inside the 10-yard line. If they'd have scored a touchdown, of course, the Lions, and the game would have been over. Tennessee wouldn't have been able to get the ball back. Those new screwy NFL overtime rules, I still don't like it quite as well as a true sudden death. But the weirder thing was, after the game, Coach Jim Schwartz, he wouldn't take the blame for that. He passed on the blame. He said that there was miscommunication. He didn't want to go for it. That is unbelievable. He said he didn't want to go for it afterwards. So a puzzling end to that game. Tennessee does come out with their first win of the season. Surprised to see Tennessee win that game. I mean, I didn't love Detroit because the Lions had been disappointing in the first 2 weeks of the season, but Tennessee had been beat by a combined 49 points in their first 2 games, pulling out a win, however, over the Detroit Lions. I think we can officially call the Lions' start to the season disappointing now. I know they pulled out that win over the Rams in Week 1. It was kind of ugly, but dominated by the 49ers in Week 2 and losing to a Tennessee team that had been hapless, prior to this game. The Detroit Lions, I think it's safe to call them a disappointment. Talked a little bit about that Pittsburgh-Oakland game. That was a crazy game. Steelers ahead for most of that game. And Carson Palmer. Wow. Carson Palmer looked as good as any quarterback in the league. I did not think Carson Palmer, to tell you the truth, still had that level of play in him. And the sky's the limit for that Oakland offense for the rest of the year. They can do some things. But that Oakland defense, they are not very good. The Raiders are just going to have to outscore people because that defense did not stop the Pittsburgh Steelers much at all today, and I don't think they're going to be stopping anybody. Didn't stop the Miami Dolphins last week. Didn't stop the San Diego Chargers in Week 1. Now, coming out of this week, again, we're hearing a lot of griping about the replacement officials. You know, the replacement officials really botched calls in a couple of games. The end of this Baltimore-New England game, Ravens kicker had a chip shot field goal, like a 30-yard field goal to win this game. I mean, it was a foregone conclusion. It was barely longer than an extra point. And it was a choke, a half shank that looked no good. I'm sure you'll see the replay. Looked no good. It looked like it missed wide left. The officials called it good and ran off the field. Bill Belichick was screaming. He wanted a replay. He chased the officials off the field, actually tried to grab one of the officials on the arm and hold him back because he wanted this play reviewed, the last play of the game. The official wouldn't give Belichick the time of day. Kept on running, kept his head down, ran off the field. So they showed the replay time and again. It was very close. I still say the kick looked no good. Looked no good to me. It was called good. Ravens getting out of there with a 1-point win. I do want to say, though, I think there, a little too big a deal is being made about this replacement official thing. I think this is overrated, and it's not like the replacement official is doing some great job. I was telling my friends this, and one of them was saying, well, there was a 20-minute delay in this game, and listen. Every single year, every single week, it seems like the other officials, they were bad too. I've never heard so much praise for NFL officials and regular NFL officials as I have over the last month since we've had these replacement officials. And quite frankly, from a fan's perspective, I don't think there's that much of a difference. True, there are bad calls, there are blown calls. The officials look bumbling at times, but so did the regular officials. Remember, the NFL officials were known to be the worst officials of any professional sports league. The only professional sports league whose officials were not full-time employees. A lot of these guys had other jobs in the offseason. So let's not forget, what we were dealing with in the beginning. Not sure these replacement officials are taking a whole lot away from the game, to be honest with you. I know I'm in the minority of that opinion. It seems like a lot of people are all over these replacement refs, from players to analysts to coaches to friends of mine, fans of the games. Nobody seems to like this replacement referee situation, but to tell you the truth, I think it's much ado about nothing. I haven't noticed that much of a difference. Sure, there are some blown calls and some idiocy on behalf of the officials, but there always is. The regular officials seem to be just as bad to me, but just one man's opinion. Now, as I said, one more game. Green Bay Packers going on the road tonight, play the Seattle Seahawks, or tomorrow night. I guess it's technically tonight. We are after midnight now. Green Bay -3, the line on BETDAQ in that game, 45, the total. This line is another game that feels suspicious. I mean, these suspicious, fishy-feeling lines, and I bet on one. I backed Oakland with no good reason. Couldn't even give logical reasoning, just that the line felt so funny that over the course of the week, I thought, how's Pittsburgh only 3.5-point favorite here? You know what? Oakland's going to win. That San Francisco-Minnesota game, another line that felt suspicious. Green Bay, certainly. For them to only be favored by 3 points over the Seattle Seahawks, and we'll have a full preview of this game up here in a little bit on the BETDAQ NFL site, but Green Bay, a 15-1 team last year. I know they lost the San Francisco 49ers in Week 1, but they looked like themselves again last week against the Chicago Bears. Seahawks, meanwhile, I know they played really well against Dallas last week. Rookie quarterback. Sure feels like Green Bay should be favored by about 6.5 or 7 here to me, but only 3. Still, it's fishy and suspicious enough. I think it might just drive me right away from it. I don't want any part of this strange Green Bay -3 on the road. But I tell you what, really wouldn't want any part of the Seattle side of this bet. Now, I was impressed with Green Bay last week. I don't know what holes people are seeing that I guess I'm not seeing. I know they were dominated by the Niners in Week 1, but again, Green Bay -3 sounds like it might not be a bad idea tonight, right? I don't know. I guess Seahawks did play very well last week. Seahawks, a tough home team. We know that. Seahawks play good on defense, so maybe some people are seeing some things I'm not seeing. Anyway, like I said, I might back off of that game after the San Diego miss this weekend. I felt so good about the Chargers, and that was such a miss, them losing 27-3, that it makes me question myself like you always do. You question yourself and question yourself again, and then in the end you watch the game and you didn't do something that your instincts told you to do and you're calling yourself an idiot. Sometimes it feels like a sickness. Not all the times, though. After all, it is the NFL season. It's football season. It doesn't last for that long. We're just getting wrapped up with week 3. Week 4 is next week, obviously. Only 17 weeks of the season, so even though sometimes it gets to feel like it's sickness and sometimes sort of piles up on you, love football, love being in the midst of the season, and we'll talk to you soon. I'm John Arnette for BETDAQ NFL.